Ed McMahon leaned close and whispered something to Johnny Carson. Johnny's laugh froze. He signaled Doc Severinsen. "Stop the music." That whisper contained the deepest secret of a 25-year friendship. The Tonight Show. Studio 6B, NBC Burbank. March 1981. Another Thursday night. Another monologue. Another 300 people in the audience expecting Johnny Carson to make them laugh before they went to sleep. Johnny was mid-joke. Something about the economy, Reagan, the usual topical humor that America had come to expect at 11:35 p.m. The audience was laughing. Doc Severinsen and the band were ready with the next musical sting. Ed McMahon sat in his usual spot beside Johnny's desk, that familiar presence, ready with his trademark laugh. Everything was exactly as it had been for nearly 20 years. The rhythm was perfect. The machine of late-night television hummed along flawlessly. And then Ed leaned over and whispered 6 words that stopped everything. Johnny's smile didn't just fade. It shattered. His hand froze mid-gesture. The joke died unfinished on his lips. He turned to look at Ed, really look at him, and for the first time in thousands of broadcasts, the mask slipped completely. The audience noticed immediately. The laughter stuttered and died. 300 people suddenly uncertain what they were witnessing. Johnny raised his hand toward Doc Severinsen. The gesture was small but unmistakable. "Stop." The band fell silent mid-note. The sudden absence of sound was deafening. "Ed," Johnny said quietly, his voice barely picked up by the microphones. "What did you just say?" Ed's face was wet with tears. The jovial sidekick, the man who had laughed on cue for 2 decades, was crying on live television. The cameras were live when Ed McMahon whispered to Johnny. Johnny's laugh froze, and he signaled Doc Severinsen. "Stop the music." That whisper revealed the deepest secret of their 25-year friendship. The control room erupted into chaos. Director Bobby Quinn was shouting into his headset. "What's happening? Did we lose someone? Do we cut to commercial?" Producer Fred DeCordova stood frozen, hand on Bobby's shoulder. "No. Keep rolling. Something's happening." On stage, Johnny had turned completely away from the audience now, facing Ed directly. His hand reached out and gripped Ed's shoulder. "When?" Johnny asked, his voice so quiet the boom operators had to strain to catch it. "This morning," Ed whispered back, his voice breaking. "The doctor called this morning. Stage 4. Pancreatic. They're saying." "Johnny, they're saying weeks. Maybe a month." The microphones caught it all. Every word. Every sob. Every breath. Johnny's hand moved from Ed's shoulder to cover his own mouth. His eyes closed. When he opened them again, they were filled with tears. The audience sat in absolute silence. No one moved. No one breathed. Everyone understood they were witnessing something that transcended entertainment. Johnny stood up from behind his desk. He'd done this thousands of times, stood during a show to welcome a guest, to do a sketch, to play a game. But this was different. This was slow. Deliberate. The movement of a man whose world had just tilted sideways. He walked around the desk to where Ed was sitting. Ed started to stand, but Johnny put a hand on his shoulder, keeping him seated. Then Johnny did something he'd never done in nearly 20 years of hosting The Tonight Show. He sat down on the edge of his own desk, directly beside Ed's chair, and put his arm around his friend's shoulders. "Ladies and gentlemen," Johnny said, his voice thick with emotion but somehow still carrying that trademark authority. "I need to tell you what just happened. Ed just told me that his wife Victoria has been diagnosed with cancer. Advanced pancreatic cancer. And the prognosis is... it's not good." A sound rippled through the studio. Part gasp, part sob. The collective breath of 300 strangers suddenly sharing an intimate grief. Carson stopped mid-monologue. The entire studio froze. To understand what happened next, you need to understand who Ed McMahon was to Johnny Carson. They'd met in 1958. Johnny was hosting a game show called Who do you trust? And needed an announcer. Ed McMahon was a local Philadelphia announcer, doing commercials, introducing acts, working whatever gigs he could find. They clicked immediately. Ed had a gift for making other people shine. He knew exactly when to laugh, when to interject, when to stay silent. He made Johnny funnier without trying to be funny himself. It was a rare talent. When NBC offered Johnny The Tonight Show in 1962, Johnny's first call was to Ed. "I'm going to New York. Come with me." Ed didn't hesitate. "When do we start?" For 19 years, they'd sat at that desk together. 5 nights a week. Thousands of broadcasts. Ed had been there for Johnny's marriages, his divorces, his triumphs, his failures. He'd been the one constant in a life of constant change. And Victoria, Ed's wife of 12 years, had been part of that extended Tonight Show family. She'd attended Christmas parties at Johnny's house. She'd been there for cast gatherings, for celebrations, for the informal moments that happened when the cameras stopped rolling. Johnny knew Victoria almost as well as he knew Ed. And now Ed was sitting beside him, live on national television, having just learned that morning that his wife was dying. "Ed told me this just now," Johnny continued, his arms still around Ed's shoulders. "Because he didn't want to tell me before the show. He knew if he did, I wouldn't be able to go on. He was trying to protect me. Protect the show. That's who Ed is." Ed shook his head, wiping his eyes. "Johnny, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." "Don't," Johnny interrupted gently. "Don't apologize. You've spent 20 years making sure I looked good. Making sure the show worked. Putting everyone else first. Not tonight." Johnny looked directly into camera one. His face was streaked with tears, his composure completely gone, and somehow that made him more real than he'd ever been on television. "Folks, I don't know what to do right now," Johnny admitted. "I've got a show to do. I've got guests waiting. But my best friend just told me his wife is dying and I don't know how to be funny right now." The audience began to applaud. Not the excited applause of entertainment. The quiet, reverent applause of people honoring honesty. It built slowly, then everyone was standing, and the applause became thunderous. Johnny raised his hand for quiet. "Here's what we're going to do. Ed, you're going home. Right now. You're going to Victoria. And you're going to stay with her for as long as she needs you. Weeks, months, however long it takes. Don't worry about the show. Don't worry about anything except being with your wife." Ed started to protest. "Johnny, I can't just..." "Yes, you can," Johnny said firmly. "And you will. The show will be here when you're ready. If you're ever ready. And if you're not, that's okay too. Subscribe and leave a comment. Because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead." Johnny looked at Fred de Cordova in the wings. "Fred, we're taking a break. 10 minutes. Get Ed's car brought around. And someone call Victoria. Tell her Ed's on his way home." The show cut to an unscheduled commercial. In those 10 minutes, everything changed. Johnny walked Ed to his dressing room. No cameras. No microphones. Just two friends who'd shared a desk for 2 decades, facing something that couldn't be joked away. "I don't know how to do this without you," Ed said quietly, gathering his things with shaking hands. "You're not doing anything without me," Johnny replied. "I'm going to be there. For both of you. Whatever you need." Ed stopped, looked at Johnny. "You mean that? Ed, you've been my partner for 19 years. You think I'm going to let you face this alone?" They embraced. Two men who'd built their careers on never showing weakness, holding each other, and crying in a dressing room while makeup artists and producers tactfully looked away. When The Tonight Show came back from commercial, Johnny sat alone behind his desk. Ed's chair beside him was empty. The audience understood why. "Ed's gone home," Johnny said simply. "And I'm going to try to finish this show because that's what we do. But I want to tell you something first." He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a blue cue card. one of the hundreds he used every night for jokes and transitions. "This is from our first show together in 1962, Johnny said, holding up the card. "Ed wrote it. It says, 'Your job is to make them laugh. My job is to make sure you can.' That's been our partnership for 19 years. Ed makes sure I can do my job. Tonight it's my turn to make sure he can do his." Johnny looked at the camera. "If you're watching, Ed, go hug your wife. Tell her you love her. And don't worry about anything else." Backstage, he made a choice no producer would have ever allowed. After the show, Johnny didn't go home. He drove to Ed and Victoria's house in Beverly Hills. He sat with them until 3 in the morning. Just sitting. Sometimes talking. Mostly just being there. He came back the next night. And the night after that. For 3 weeks, Johnny Carson. The king of late-night television, a man whose time was worth thousands of dollars per minute, spent his evenings sitting in Ed McMahon's living room, keeping vigil. The Tonight Show continued. Guest hosts filled in. The ratings dropped. NBC executives complained. Johnny didn't care. "I can find another announcer," Johnny told Fred de Cordova. "I can't find another Ed." But this was the moment no one in the studio, nor anyone at home, ever saw coming. Victoria McMahon didn't die in weeks. The doctors had been wrong about the timeline. She lived for 7 more months. Difficult months. Painful months. But months filled with love and presence, and the knowledge that she wasn't alone. Ed never missed a day at her bedside. And Johnny never missed visiting at least twice a week, often bringing dinner, sometimes just sitting quietly while Victoria slept and Ed tried to hold himself together. On November 12, 1981, Victoria passed away peacefully at home with Ed holding her hand. The funeral was private. Just family and close friends. Johnny spoke at the service. Not jokes. Not entertainment. Just honest words about a woman he'd known, respected, and loved as a friend. Ed took 2 months off from The Tonight Show. When he came back in January 1982, the audience stood and applauded for a full minute before he could even sit down. Johnny stood from behind his desk and embraced his friend on camera. "Welcome home," he said quietly. "Thanks for keeping the chair warm," Ed replied, his voice thick. They sat down. The desk. The chairs. The partnership. Everything exactly as it had been, except everything had changed. That night, Johnny pulled something from his desk drawer. The blue cue card from 1962. The one Ed had written about their partnership. "I want to add something to this," Johnny said, holding it up. He pulled out a pen and wrote on the back of the card while the camera zoomed in to capture it. "And when you can't do your job," Johnny wrote, "I make sure you don't have to." He showed it to Ed. "New partnership agreement." Ed couldn't speak. He just nodded, tears streaming down his face. Johnny placed the cue card back in his desk drawer. It stayed there for the next 10 years, until his final broadcast in 1992. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. After Johnny retired, he donated many items to the Smithsonian for their television history collection. That blue cue card, with Ed's words on the front and Johnny's edition on the back, was among them. It sits in the archives now, behind glass, a reminder of what partnership really means. Ed McMahon worked with Johnny for 30 years total. He never remarried after Victoria. When asked why, he said, "I had one great love. That was enough." When Johnny Carson died in 2005, Ed was one of the pallbearers. He carried his friend's casket with tears streaming down his face, remembering that night in 1981 when Johnny had stopped the show, sent him home, and proven that some things matter more than television. The blue cue card still exists in the Smithsonian archives. Ed's words on the front. "Your job is to make them laugh. My job is to make sure you can." Johnny's edition on the back. "And when you can't do your job, I make sure you don't have to." That's what partnership means. That's what friendship means. And that's what Johnny Carson taught America on the night he stopped being a host and became simply a friend. Ed McMahon passed away in 2009. At his funeral, that cue card was displayed beside his photograph. 2 friends. 1 desk. 30 years. And a promise kept.